Recognizing quorum, the chair opens the September 9th, 2024 meeting of the Community Housing Committee. This meeting is being held in a hybrid model, both in person in the hearing room of Yarmouth Town Hall, 1146 Route 28, and remotely via the virtual computer platform Zoom. Committee members may participate in person or through remote participation pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency signed into law on June 16, 2021, and extended through March 31, 2025. The information to access this meeting via Zoom was published on the agenda with the town clerk and on the town's website with a minimum 48-hour notice to the public. The public is welcome to attend in person or remotely. This meeting is being recorded. So, I move to open the meeting.
My second.
You just open it up by roll call vote, and you'll call everybody.
Okay. Drew?
Here.
Tom?
Here.
Greg?
Here.
Lee?
Here.
John? Here. So the first order of business is request for rent increases for 63 Wilton South Yarmouth and 5 Appleby Road, formerly 539 Route 28 West Dennis.
You can recognize the project proponent.
Pardon?
And you just recognize the project proponent.
Project proponent is here, Kieran Healy. Welcome.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Kieran Healy. I am the owner of the property on Wilton Road, and my brother owns the property on Appleby Road. I'm here representing both properties. As is customary after a few years, when the rents change, we come back to this board to look for some rent increases on the properties. And from here it goes on to the state and to the selectmen to get approval, but first of all we have to come to this board. The number one criteria is that we meet the allowances that are for this particular type of project. So I come in and I meet with Mary and we go through the numbers to be sure that the rental amounts that I'm looking for meet the criteria set by the regulatory agreement on both of these properties. One of the properties includes utilities and one of the properties does not include utilities. As a result, the rent amounts that can be requested are different. Obviously the one with the where the utilities are not included, those rents are lower than the ones that the utilities are included. So we've, I believe we've complied with the regulations, and glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Mary, did you produce the backup document?
So in your packet, we'll start with Wilton. Wilton has 3 units, A, B, and C. And you have a cover letter from Kieran proposing the rents. Now, I took those, we worked out those rents. They're on this chart. They're on this chart, right? And so the first rows are all about, are they in compliance with the regulatory agreement, with your standards, with the federal fair market rate rents, with the home rents, including all utilities, right? And they are. Then you come to the second set, and it talks about the utility allowance and subtracting out a utility allowance. Mm-hmm. And we use the current Yarmouth Housing Authority numbers. And that's where we finally calculated that for Unit A and B, the proposed rent, not including any utilities, could be no more than $1,275. And for C, the proposed rent could be, not including any utilities, the proposed rent could be no more than $1,479. So that's their cap, right? They can change their lease up to that. But because we don't have any contact with the tenants, right, typically the board conditions it on that with this rent increase, no current tenant will pay more than 40% of their actual income on housing costs. That just protects them legislation would protect them from somebody being priced out of an affordable unit. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about who's in these units now. Are there any Section 8 voucher holders? Is there one that's vacant?
There are, in the Wilton units, all three are occupied. One is a Section 8 tenant. One is a mother and son. They both work. The son is 25 or something like that. And one is a single woman who lives in the A unit. She has been with me for 10 years at this location. And, you know, when you say utilities not included, I do pay for the septic system, I do pay for the water, I do pay for the groundskeeping and the snow removal and the trash. So it's the primary ones are heat and electricity that I do not pay for. We also have these units monitored by Barnstable Housing to see that these tenants comply with the income requirements. I have requested that. Typically it takes about 3 or 4 weeks to come back, and we're in the middle of that right now. I don't expect any issues because one of the tenants, the latest tenant, just moved in a year ago, and her situation hasn't changed substantially, so I do not expect any issues with these 3 tenants complying with the regulations. And the rent income not exceeding 40% of the income.
I know for sure that 2 out of the 3 will be able to afford the rent increase. And then if we have a question about the 3rd one, we call in Barnstable Housing Authority to help us out to determine whether they can afford it or not.
Am I not seeing the current rent on this form anyplace?
You're correct. Do you have off the top of your head the current rents?
The current rent is approximately $190 less on both of them, on all of them. And I don't come back. We know everything is, I just went to the grocery store. We know everything is still going up. So, even though Barnstable County modifies the home rent every year, I don't come back to this board every year. I come back every couple of years, so.
So when was the last time you were here?
It was in 2022.
2023. Remember, it was, you initiated it in 2022. So, their approved rents from 2023. It took us a while. Remember, we had to go to the Board of Selectmen twice. It took us a while to get it passed. But right now, the maximum rent for Unit A and B is $1,081. And C is $1,256.
And I gave my tenants notice that the rents were going up in December, with the understanding that it normally takes 3 to 5 months to get through all the different people who have to sign off on this. Yep.
So the Section 8 voucher holder will have no problem, right? The household that just got placed, we just did it, they're on the higher end of the low moderate income scale, so there'll be no problem. And then the 3rd one, we'll just have Barnstable Housing Authority look at it and make sure they're not paying so much that they become homeless because of the rent increase. So that's why it's important for you to put that condition of no more than 40% of their actual.
So how does that get initiated with Barnstable?
I've already reached out to Barnstable to request the yearly monitoring. Okay. I pay them every year to monitor the situation so that they confirm the tenants haven't added 2 more jobs or added 3 more people to the house. Obviously, I'd know that, but just they send out a form to those tenants, and the tenant fills out what their income is and who's living in the house to be sure that they are not adding people.
Their new leases are supposed to come my way.
Okay.
And Kieran does a good job managing these properties. He knows that, you know, with Barnstable Housing Authority looking at it, with me looking at it, he knows that we'll catch it. We'll catch it.
If these properties are in Yarmouth, why does Barnstable Housing Authority have it?
Because Yarmouth Housing Authority does not do that type of monitoring. And I have to say, Barnstable Housing Authority is we're lucky to partner with them.
They're the largest on the Cape.
They are the largest on the Cape, and they do these monitoring lickety-split, I find. The only reason why this one isn't done is because some of the paperwork that I gave them actually had a typo, had another household name on it. It was a carryover from a last, so now she has to, because of that, she has to, like, start from scratch and audit the whole file.
Does Barnstable also approve the rent increases?
We don't approve the rent as such, but they're a monitoring agent checking to be sure that everything I do and everything that Town of Yarmouth allows me to do meets the state regulations. So they're kind of a watchdog, basically.
So once the rent is approved, it goes from here, you'd have to take a vote whether you approve this. Then it also has to be approved by the select board and the state. And so then, what I can do is I can let Barnstable know, the monitoring agent know, what the final decision is.
If we approve it, but someone else doesn't, then what happens?
It comes back here.
Okay. So then I would have to look at a lesser amount. That's okay.
Do you have other units in this complex, or just these three?
This, Wilton Road only has 3 units, and all 3 are affordable. Appleby has 8 units, and 2 are affordable.
Okay. Well, I'd like to make the recommendation that we vote to approve this.
I second.
But we want to add the caveat that, that no existing tenant is paying more than 40%, right, Mary?
Yes, so you want to say that you approve the proposed rents as listed here, which is $1,275 a month, without any utilities for units A and B, and then $1,479 a month for unit C, not including any utilities, provided that the rent increase will cause no existing tenant to pay more than 40% of their actual income on housing costs.
Roll call vote?
And who seconded it?
I second it.
Just ask anybody online if they have any questions. That's it.
I don't have a question. Drew does not have a question.
Okay. Tom?
Tom agrees.
Okay. So roll call vote, Tom?
Aye.
Drew?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
John? Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. And thank you. Now we need to do the same for the second one, because that was just for Wilton. The second one, Appleby is a little bit different because the utilities are included. And the rent amount is set at a different rate. I believe it's 80%. So these numbers are a little bit higher than the previous numbers. Unit 6, it's a one-bedroom unit that includes all the utilities, and that is $1,524. And unit number 4, which is a 2-bedroom unit, that's $1,831, and that is a 2-bedroom unit, as I mentioned, including all the utilities. Unit 4 is occupied at the moment by a Section 8 tenant, and Unit 6 is empty at the moment, and a new tenant will be processed for that unit. And from the tenants we find, we have to go through the ready rent list to select the tenant from there. So
Those
the
new
process.
tenants, yeah, and those new tenants are not allowed to pay more than 40%. We typically try to target somewhere in the range of 30 to 35% of their actual income on the housing costs. So again, I'm pretty confident that these 2 units will have tenants that have no housing costs.
They have no what?
Housing cost burden, sorry.
Okay, do we want to make a motion on,
I make a motion that we allow the rent increase, so long as it is not over 40% of the current tenant or a new tenant's income.
second?
Aye.
And roll call vote. Drew?
Yes.
Tom?
regulatory agreements, right? We list the initial lease-up rent, and there's no language in there for how they go about raising them every year. And, yeah, I've encouraged these project proponents to change that, but from now on, we're going to have a schedule of how they go up, so that it would save them from this. But.
Before we move on, I just want to be clear, so Yarmouth Housing Authority does not have the staff to do this stuff, and Barnstable does. Does Barnstable do this for other towns as well?
Yeah, they make a little bit of money in consulting
So Yarmouth
services.
pays them to do this for this?
No, the property owner does.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the property owner does. Some people use Falmouth Housing Authority. So Barnstable does it, Falmouth Housing Authority. I don't know what other housing authority does it.
Because I was at Bourne, this was not
Right.
we did our own.
Yes. The state has encouraged the town of Yarmouth to use an outside party. So we don't, I'll just say it out loud, I don't receive as much training as housing authority staff do from the state. And also, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the housing authority staff has more access to state records, income records of their residents. Everything I do is third-party verification, whereas housing authorities can actually see.
Yeah, they do a very thorough job
Yeah,
as well.
they can see more.
They're like this thick.
So.
My question would be, we have a Yarmouth Housing Authority. They're too small, and then the
They're
staff...
too small. They're too small. They're just at that point where if they get any bigger, it triggers a lot more reporting and a lot more work. So
They're considered small housing authorities,
Yeah.
leaving them in large.
Right.
so
They're the two largest, Barnstable and Falmouth.
yeah, Falmouth is big. Falmouth is big.
Okay, next order of business, minutes. I think everybody got a copy of the minutes, or draft minutes from the August 12th meeting. Do we have any comments?
I have no comment.
The only comment I had was members absent. I don't think Josh was here last time, right?
No, he wasn't.
Yeah. That was the only comment that I had.
Actually, no, very good. Gosh, yeah. I have a comment. I will say, Mary, as someone who has put together minutes in the past, you do a very thorough job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we need a motion to accept the draft minutes as amended by adding Josh to the members absent.
Correct.
Okay, I'll move that. I move we accept those minutes as amended.
I second.
Okay, roll call vote. Drew?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
John? Aye. Okay. Next is representative to Community Preservation Committee.
Okay, so it's that time of year. Slowly, all the other committees are going through their lists and looking at their records about appointments and representatives from other committees. So we have a memo from John Marie Flett, who's the program coordinator for the Community Preservation Program, dated August 29th, 2024, and asking the Community Housing Committee to confirm their representative to the Community Preservation Committee.
And currently, Lee, you're the representative, correct?
Correct.
Is that something that you want to continue to do?
I would stay on for 3 more years, but not after that, because I'll be really old. I'm already pretty old, I guess I'm not supposed to, they say old, yeah, I guess I can say old.
You can say whatever you want. I mean, you're so old, you can say whatever you want.
When you get to be a certain age, you can say what you want.
Yeah, exactly.
When I first was on this committee,
We don't know, but
when I first was on, I had no idea what I was in for. And I was in the middle of a big consulting project. And then when the RFPs came in, we met every week for ages. You know, so now I kind of understand the process a little bit better. So I'm willing to stay on if the board approves. But if they think somebody else might be better for this, I can live with that. So.
I will say this, apparently I've not reached that age that I can say whatever I want, because I still get in trouble.
So is there anybody who wants to be like Lee's assistant and learn the ropes?
What does it entail? I mean,
So it's a wonderful committee because you have money,
okay.
okay? I don't know, they program out $1 million or more a year.
Well, I don't know how much is available now because we bonded a large amount for the, that new project. So we have RFPs that come forward.
We're talking about community preservation, and here's Dawn Marie.
Hello.
No. No, because I've been in this meeting. But can you take a seat real quick? Quick. This is Dawn Marie Fletch. She's the program coordinator for community preservation. And we just asked, what does it entail, like, what does a community preservation committee member have to do?
Oh, well, we have meetings usually from the fall through the winter through annual town meeting, and kind of light meeting schedule from, say, May to September. But in October, November, it can be almost every Wednesday for those 2 months when the committee receives the new applications. Our deadline this year is September 20th, a week from Friday, and then I'll spend a week going through the applications that come in and distribute them to the committee the following week. We review the applications, we invite the applicants to come in for interviews, and then evaluate over the course of, depends on how many applications we get, but evaluate the applications over the course of a couple of months, and then make recommendations, present it to the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom, and then prepare for town meeting, which the new administration has taken over a lot of the talking parts at town meeting.
Good.
Yeah, so usually everybody takes a turn presenting a little piece of the warrant articles at town meeting. Lee's done it, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
He's done it.
It's a script. You don't have to wing it. You're just basically reading from the warrant,
You do very well in preparing us for that.
right? And then,
Lawton, who's the vice chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, usually handles that piece. Like the applicant, usually a committee member starts the ball rolling at town meeting, but the applicant is supposed to be there to answer any specific questions.
right.
And the applicant is who? Would be someone who's got some property that needs preservation, or?
Could be a variety depending upon what applications are coming forward.
Could be a town department, could be a,
we just got
Apartment, like a park needs to be,
Yep.
okay, gotcha.
But they should be present if there are any questions available asked, and they answer the questions.
could be Habitat, the Affordable Housing Trust.
Forward, we just got a little update from Forward at the Rock. You familiar with that project? They've got a huge organization, and they got a grant a couple of years ago from us, and so we don't know their program inside and out and their project, which is to build some more housing over on Holcomb Rock Road in Dennis. So they need to be there to answer the questions. Like I say,
Historical Commission sometimes.
Yep.
Privately or publicly owned historic sites come. Sometimes we own the sites.
Need some more, I mean.
Sometimes.
The Methodist Church is coming in this year. I think they're submitting
Did
applications.
St. David's go through this a few years?
David's did, yep.
Okay, I remember.
The Yarmouth Friends had phase one. It was approved last year, and they're going to have phase two coming forward this year.
And Dawn Marie helps them with the application a little bit, and then afterwards helps everybody stay in compliance with all sorts of town and state rules and regulations about spending money and all of that stuff. So it's a great committee to be on. And you get to know all the different uses and like the comprehensive interaction between historic preservation, affordable housing, open space, recreation. You get to know a lot about the different parts of the town, and of course it's nice because it's all under community development, right? So it's like you get to know the community development department well, and
Yeah, and some of the fun projects going on in town. You know, because the whole community preservation program came about to make sure there's money set aside for projects that typically get eliminated from the general operating budget. So that's why it's housing, open space and rec, historic preservation,
yeah.
because those are typically, you know, under the gun when it's time to cut budgets.
So Lee, it sounds like Lee wants to stay on, but she's kind of like, okay, no more than this amount of time. So I was trying to recruit somebody to kind of,
Well, now we're doing 3 years, we haven't done that in the past, and I'll be really super old. So I'm willing to stay on, but I know I won't stay on past that period.
Yeah. And, yeah, it was always supposed to be 3 years. I don't know what happened.
Well, I used to have to go reaffirm every year, pretty much, I think.
Right.
I'm just trying
Gotta
to
get it
see if
back
there's
on
another
track.
member that can kind of, work with Lee a little bit, maybe go to a couple of the meetings, see what it's like, so Lee can pass the baton.
I have some interest in it, but I can't commit right at the moment. I know I couldn't do every Wednesday for the next few months, but I recall I was an applicant a few years back in a different town. So,
Okay.
So, and it is kind of a fascinating process, and it encompasses a lot of different things. That's why I asked, but I can't commit right now. Really.
If I was reappointed and decided I couldn't fulfill the 3 years, could it come back to the committee to appoint somebody else?
Yep.
At that point,
So
you
in
could have
that
somebody
sense,
shadow you and
Yeah, I would be willing to stay on with that, knowing I have that stipulation. But then it's up to the committee if they want to appoint somebody to, what would be the term?
To fill an unexpired term. To fill an unexpired term. So if you do 2 years and then you're done,
Right.
the committee could appoint somebody to fill the 1 year of your unexpired 3-year term.
Right, correct.
So, what I would do is I would take a vote, unless somebody else is interested, to recommend reappointing me for 3 years. And then maybe, I think you have me on your short list of emails for the agendas. Maybe we'll confirm that.
Okay.
We'll make sure that I get those agendas. When Lee gets an agenda, I get an agenda. And then maybe I can send it out to the committee members, and that way if somebody wants to shadow Lee at these meetings, they're welcome to. Does that sound like a good
And I
plan?
have let the committee know the RFP would to come out, and I'll be away from October 3rd to October 10th. So we talked about that. I announced that in the meeting.
Yep.
And they'll all get the packet, so I won't get the packet till I come back from my trip.
Right, right. But because the next scheduled meeting is October 9th. Like I say, the applications are due September 20th. That gives me some time to get them organized and distributed, and October 9th we start looking at them.
And I'll be out of the country.
And you'll look at them October 11th when you get back.
I have to say that when I first went on that committee, I was in the middle of a very large consulting project, and I had no idea what I was in for. Nobody gave me the heads up about the RFPs and meeting once a week, and it was really challenging for me.
For that
That first
period of time, it can be intense. But then, like for the other 8-9 months out of the year, it's light. As
It's
opposed to,
easier without being in the middle of a big project.
for sure.
It's a big project.
And the committee is, I think, 9 members?
9 members, right.
And it's the same for all new members, you know what I mean? They kind of go, whoa, but some of them have been on the committee for years. and very experienced, and we have a staff person. So I hope it was never been overwhelmingly.
First it was, because I didn't know what I was getting in for. And as I said, I was in the middle of this really, really big,
Yeah.
as it was a big, really big project that I was leading. So that was a challenge, but I rolled with it, and I participated, and I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
And it's super coordinated. I mean, I think
The chairs had been on it forever, I think since the beginning almost.
Yeah.
So he's really knowledgeable about, what's appropriate, because the committee's responsibility is to make sure that the project and the application are appropriate, first of all, for the money and the guidelines and allowable uses of the money, of the CPA funds. So that's the first really big question. And then if you look at the application, it gives other guidelines as to what makes a project, favorable or most favorable, highly favorable. And there's a list of goals that the committee has set to attain, and they're all linked to the other town, like the HPP, and the open space and rec plan for recreation and open space projects. So it's not just willy-nilly, do we like this or do we not like it? There are actual charts and guidelines we have to follow.
And if I'm correct, they have to be able to spend the money and they get reimbursed.
That's the other big point, right?
And they can't include administration in their application.
Because if you think about it, actually, we did recently have a candidate who wanted to try to do a housing project, but wasn't set up as a 501c3. And, if you take a step back and say, listen, this is taxpayer money. We can't just give you, Joe Blow, $100,000 to go build a house and say you're going to let people with disabilities live there, right? That's not allowed. You can't do that with taxpayer money. You need to have checks and balances and transparencies and things like that.
Now, when we make this recommendation, is it a recommendation to the select board to appoint Lee?
I believe it is.
The select board is the actual appointing body, so you're voting on a recommendation to the select board for a person from our committee, the committee, to be appointed to the CPC. It has to be from this committee, but you have to make the recommendation to the select board, and they make the actual appointment. Thank you, that was very opportune.
Timing is impeccable.
Oh, I'm glad that worked out.
Can we get a motion to make a recommendation to the select board to appoint Lee to the
CPC.
Community Preservation Committee for a term of 3 years if she does not fulfill that term due to various circumstances, then we would appoint somebody to fulfill the term after that.
You just automatically come back to us with it.
Yeah, does that have to be in the approval? I don't know if that's a given. It doesn't have to be part of
To
it.
recommend the select board appoint Lee Hamilton to the CPC as the CHC's representative for a term of 3 years.
Yeah. Are you saying reappoint her because it's not in the union, or it doesn't matter?
We can say reappoint.
I make a motion, how do I say this? As was just said.
Yep.
Okay, does that work? All right.
Okay. Second? Anyone?
Any questions? Something?
I second.
Okay, and roll call vote. Drew?
Yes?
Tom?
Aye.
Greg?
Yes.
Did I get to go for the
Sure. You can roll
I
back,
want this
but
to be unanimous.
Okay, yes.
John, yes.
That was
I
just
don't
funny
want them to
to
think
go
that you were forced into it.
You voted against yourself.
Well, sometimes when I feel like there's a conflict, I abstain. But I notice other people don't do that, so.
Okay, now moving to old business, Affordable Homes Act Housing Bond Bill update. Not exactly sure what's new on that, Mary.
Right, so, I did receive the, I did receive the whole bill from town council. Haven't read it.
Is it 162 pages?
It's really long, yeah. And, I'm attending, the One Cape, seminar or event that the Cape Cod Commission is putting on, and there's going to be a section on seasonal communities. And then I noticed that CHAPA is starting to put out information about the money. And we're going to talk a little bit about the planning board coming up, that they have some work to do about to bring our current zoning bylaw into compliance with the new Affordable Homes Act. There's been a lot of meetings, the MMA and the planners, the Massachusetts Planners Association, if that's their name, they've been having meetings with their lawyers presenting about the ADU bylaw. People are really, they think that's the piece that people are going to work on first locally, is to bring up their local zoning to match. And then people will continue on to look at the seasonal communities designation, and then figure out how to get access to all those funds. And it's mostly a funding bill.
How long do the communities have to get their zoning?
So the state law goes, the zoning that was passed in the state law goes into effect in February. So there's many towns that are, or municipalities that are not going to make that deadline. So the town councils are trying to ensure that towns don't act in a way that causes a conflict between the local zoning and the state statute. Recommending, recognizing that the state statute.
The state must be prepared for that.
Yeah.
And given that we passed the ADU guidelines, I believe the state's a little bit more open. And how is that going to gel with what the town has approved? Are they going to have to come back to the drawing board?
Yep. It takes away several provisions that Yarmouth Town Meeting voted for, such as owner-occupied. I think a number of parking spots has to be changed. I think we currently require 2 per unit. The state statute says you can only require 1 for the ADU. And the size.
Tightened up and some things got a little looser.
I think everything got looser.
Except for the parking.
Now, the parking, I'm sorry, I misspoke. So, right now in Yarmouth, you'd have to have 4 parking spots if you had added an ADU to your unit, right? The state says that the town can only require 1 spot for the ADU. Okay.
Even if it's a 3-bedroom ADU.
Right.
Yep.
Now, it doesn't say anything about, and I haven't read it, but I haven't heard anybody saying that the state, what does the state say about us requiring parking for the main part of the building?
So I was going to ask that when you said it needs to be 4 parking spaces, right? So what does that mean, that every house needs to have 3 parking spaces?
I don't know. All the state has said is that a town can't require more than 1 parking spot per ADU. But we used to require 2 for the main building and 2 for the ADU. But I don't think, I'd have to look at what our zoning requires for a single-family home.
All over the place, streets, and exactly,
And that's what this town, the planning board and the zoning board of appeals worked out. They said, well, when this whole ADU thing was getting discussed for like the last 20 years in Yarmouth, right? They were saying, well, we didn't want to allow the second apartment if people were parking on the lawn to start with. So that was their way of managing that parking. So I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, our streets are not built.
Are we required to go by the state requirement?
Yeah.
they want money from
Yep.
them.
We want money from the state.
No, I think that if somebody was denied a building permit based on local zoning that was not in compliance with the state statute, they could appeal it. They'd appeal it to the zoning board of appeals, and they would probably win. If they didn't win at that level, they'd win at the next level, you know.
And where is it with the seasonal? Because when they said parts of Barnstable, and they said, I think it was all of Nantucket or all of Martha's Vineyard, they came up which island. So it was all the seasonal, but not so
That
much.
still hasn't been determined yet for Yarmouth, correct?
Right, it's parts of Barnstable County, and I think it's more like P-Town and Truro. No, we are not an automatic seasonal community, but you can only be, but even if we were, you have to still adopt it because you have to change different provisions in your town, such as you have to allow tiny homes. So the building code has just changed. There's a draft building code that defines tiny homes. So that's all under review. And it does say in the Mass Building Code, all I know right now at this point is that I haven't read it, but that they do require a foundation. So that's good news. It's not things that are on wheels. Right? It has to have a foundation, but it has things like it doesn't necessarily need two means of egress because it's so small. Or that, yeah, but, and some of these tiny homes have pop-ups.
I've been in one, and you can almost reach the walls.
They have a pop-up where your bed is, kind of like a VW camper, and that has a window, and that's the second means of egress. Because you know, it's so small, you can't put in two doors. I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. So where were you in a tiny home?
When I worked at Boston University,
Okay.
we were considering a lot. There was only so much space in the city, and BU's has so much space. They're trying to figure where can we do. They put a trailer on top of the building back in the 80s. I was lucky. I got to rent that out. It's like it's still on Beacon Street. If you ever go to a Red Sox game, search out the we used to call it the trailer park in the sky. Yeah, you don't notice it, but if you're walking down Beacon Street and you look up, you go, what is that? It looks like a big trailer on top of the apartment.
BU's bought up so much real estate in that, all those old brownstones and such that.
They bought them, and they really ticked off a lot of the neighbors. Yeah. But when the neighbor goes to sell, they go to BU first.
Right.
You want to buy my property, and they jack up the rent. But yeah, they just sprawled out into the neighborhoods there. So, and those are all the apartments that I was in charge of, and the neighbors hated us. But we picked up their trash. We shoveled the snow for them, but they
Right.
still hated us with all the students. But anyway, the university considered somehow trying to find ways to maybe take
Right.
advantage of it.
Right.
So we toured some.
Well, some communities, and I can't remember exactly where right now, have built tiny houses to accommodate the homeless. And there's little developments.
I think out in the West Coast.
Yeah, you see that.
And places like that.
You see that, and you see a lot of activists. Online, you see people who are working as grassroots movement in homelessness issues, just building these things and plopping them. So it's interesting. But yeah, that's the only update I have is that really these agencies and these lobby groups are starting to have sessions on them. More to come, I'm sure. It's a very big bill.
Where does the town go then, with this parking issue for ADUs? I mean, potentially you're going to have, like Greg said, people parking on lawns, 3 or 4 cars on a lawn, and I mean,
We have some people that's moved into my neighborhood, and I call it the car farm because there's 5 or 6 cars, and if there's no space on the lawn, they're parking in the street. As you know, you just said, the streets here are small. There's not a lot of lighting. Someone comes around a corner, and there's a car parked in a bad spot. It's not going to be pretty. So I'm concerned too with
How
parking.
many people living in that unit?
Well, I don't want to speculate.
So I do have to say that our health department has a very well-managed program to get all the rental units in town registered, all the short-term rentals registered. And you're talking about the occupancy. They are looking at occupancy during their inspections because we have a water quality issue. So we can't allow an infinite number of flushes.
And as I mentioned last
So-
time, I was in a couple of those inspections, and people have the living room is set up as a bedroom, and in all the rooms, and it's clearly there's too many people
Yeah.
living in this space. So I get it.
We might not be able
Sometimes
to,
not the woods, but at the same time,
Yeah.
you're right. There's only so much.
so we might not be able to manage it by parking spots, but we might be able to manage it by wastewater flow.
Okay.
So that's going to be a big,
Well, I know that the house that I bought, at one time had 3 bedrooms, they broke down the bedroom and made it into a dining room, and that's my living room now. But they rented out space in the basement, which
Yeah.
is illegal.
that was
When
awful.
I had my house inspected, the inspection said you can never have anybody living there, and then later on I found out lots of people were living there,
Yeah,
including somebody who worked for the heating and cooling system that I use,
Yeah.
that I used to rent space in the basement. And there is a basement door, but they considered it illegal.
there's not 2 means of
Not
egress.
to-
It's very, very dangerous.
And a lot of times I've seen the ceiling in these basements. It's not enough space. Yeah, it's like 6 foot, and I'm like,
What is a classic basement? Because it's really finished, and there's radiant heat in the floor, but there's unfinished things because they couldn't put doors in the bedrooms that were illegal. And so there's some things unfinished, but I was surprised. And they only said moved out for 5 years and were renting it out, which was illegal. And somebody in the neighborhood dropped a dime, and then they were forced to sell. And they were not happy, and they let me know they were not happy. And we did some whatever things, but, I got a nice place to live, so I'm grateful.
Well, I mean, in some ways, it may self-regulate itself because as the owner of the property, do you necessarily want 3 or 4 cars parked in your yard? So, I mean, that may in and of itself help regulate it to
Right.
some degree, but
Except you don't have to have the property owner there anymore.
how many
I think that's
absentee?
a problem.
So when you guys go for the LCP, there's that September 26th meeting, you should bring it up. You should bring it up.
What's September 26th?
I sent an email to you all about, from the planning board. The planning board has invited all committee members to participate in the local comprehensive plan, the development of the local comprehensive plan. And that's a good time to, talk about that. Say, with the changes to the ADU, how do we manage parking? How do we manage wastewater flow? How do we make sure that these units don't negatively impact the
I've
neighborhood?
been concerned, especially all the guidelines they put into ours, there was still a lot of conflict at the meetings that was discussed, we didn't want it in a neighborhood kind of thing.
Because that's all the things that the planning board worked so hard on with these ADU bylaws was to prevent this, and now it's all gone. So,
Off the top of your head, how many landlords do you think in Yarmouth are absentee landlords?
I think that there's a very high bar.
They don't check anything,
It's a very high bar set by the largest property management company in town, which is Davenport Realty. There's a very high bar. So what's nice about that is that you have one company that owns a lot of units, right? So if you have a problem, you can go to one office, right? And then otherwise, a lot of them have been created more recently with our changes to the bylaw with affordable requirements, affordable housing requirements. So what's happened is that they're very attentive property management companies. Like we just had somebody here today. They know we're watching, right? So I think that Yarmouth, while it might have the largest number of rental units, and out of all the other Cape Towns, we probably have a large number, probably second only to Barnstable. But because we have so many consolidated under bigger companies, I think we do well.
I think for the most part, Davenport is on top of things, and they maintain their properties quite well.
They do an excellent job. So they set a really high standard for rental units. But unlike other towns, we don't have we have scattered sites, one person might own one property, but we don't have these mid-range property management companies. So I think we do fairly well. I think our rental stock is pretty good.
So I was actually, when I say I was in some of those inspections, it was with Davenport
Yeah.
and with the health department, so.
Yeah.
And yeah, Davenport does a great job. They're the biggest landlord in town by far.
Yes, they're the largest taxpayer in town. So, and we're very fortunate to have them because they do an excellent job. And then,
Do they take subsidized
oh yeah,
tenants?
oh yeah. Everybody has to take Section 8,
Yeah, it's discrimination not to.
right.
But, when you drive around town, I just know where a lot of Davenport's properties are, and they're constantly upgrading the property. They're putting new siding on or doing something to improve it, so.
The properties that become problem properties are properties where the trash. Did you notice that Kieran Healy said he does the trash? See, landlords are supposed to manage the trash. The reason being that it can get neglected and then you get rodents. So that's the big nuisance that we hear is that trash is piling up and there's rodents. So the health department is on that.
Okay. Move on. Soldier on veteran housing model, the tour of the Brighton facility. We had Mary had put together some dates that she sent out to everybody.
I don't think I'm going to be able to make that, but if the date is set and I can, I'm happy to go.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I've
Okay.
started a consulting thing that's going to keep me busy for a couple of months.
Let me give you their preferred date. Hold on. We wanted to do Wednesday, October 2nd at 10 a.m.
I'll be getting ready to go away. October, too, is going to be busy for me between traveling and the health consulting, seriously consulting.
Drew and Palm, how is October 2nd at 10 a.m.?
Well, that particular day, I think, would be okay for me at that morning time, yes.
I will have to check the
Okay.
schedule and get back to you. I'm doubtful, but I will try.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm doubtful, but if I can make it, I'll make it.
Well, if it's, maybe Palm can join us, maybe Myra.
Yeah, I mean, at least we could make a report to the rest of the people. Would that be worthwhile in any case?
Yeah, even just a video or something when you're there.
Palm, what's your schedule for that day? Are you available October 2nd at 10?
Me?
Palm.
Oh,
Yeah, I can do that. And since we're talking about dates, are we doing 9/20 as well? Or is,
Oh, that's different. Yeah, so
Okay.
that's a different site. So let's just put that on our calendar for October 2nd, and I'll check with everybody else, and, because, that's great, all right.
okay, I'm doing it
Thank you.
for me.
I left affordable housing standards on there just so that it didn't fall off. I think the chair is still researching for us about accessible issues.
So, where are we going with that, the language for,
I think it should just be some kind of,
language that you're complying with state building code and with fair housing or something like that?
I think that we should put something more like that the housing committee in their review of projects with affordable units, would like to see, encourages developers to create accessible affordable units. And then just leave it there. So,
The word encourages.
yeah, because I think that, first of all, they're standards. They're Board of Selectmen policies, so they're not regulations or zoning, right? But at least it gets them thinking about it. And in that form, there's a form in it. I can add to that, is this an accessible unit? So what happens sometimes is this is kind of a negotiation, right? Like you've seen it. They want approval, they need a waiver or relief from something, from the special permit granting authority. But for the affordable unit, they'll do this for us. You know what I mean? They'll reduce the rent, or they'll make it accessible, or, you know what I mean? Like, so sometimes when they ask for those waivers from either the zoning board of appeals or the planning board, because it's something like physically on the site they cannot meet, they'll sometimes increase the quality of something else they're offering with the proffer. So that's why I think that we should put that in there and just keep studying the issue.
Did we get any feedback on if there is a stated need for accessible units in terms of rental?
So I looked at the current wait list for the Ready Renter program, which is about maybe 150 households. And I didn't see that there was a significant number of households that said they needed reasonable accommodations. But we have a lottery at 775 Main Street in West Dennis, which got just over 100 applications, and one of the units had an accessibility preference. So people were really encouraged to look at that part of their application, that this had an accessible unit and accessible preference. So we'll be able to look at those numbers to see how many people did have a need. I can also ask, but it's not in Yarmouth, it's LeClaire Village in Mashpee. They just had a lottery. I could see if they tracked that as well. But our lottery from 2 years ago, I don't think, it's just a wait list. There weren't any accessible units advertised.
You talked about whether there is a demand and it's not noted because people don't think that there will be accessible units, and then Greg brought up the issue too of, okay, you have an accessible unit that may sit there empty, and
They need to rent it, then someone needs it.
Right. But we'll have, so they just closed the lottery on August 27th. That was the deadline, and they have until, you have there's 5 more days for the applications that were postmarked by that deadline to arrive to the lottery agent, which is Plymouth Redevelopment Authority. So Plymouth Redevelopment Authority is now starting to really process those 100 applications. So they'll be able to tell me fairly quickly the data on the accessible households.
A little aside, on your you say you have 150 people on the Ready.
On the general wait list for the Ready Renter program.
How long have some of those people been waiting?
So our wait lists of that type are only good for 2 years.
then the slate gets wiped clean at that point?
Yep. Unlike
Have
the,
to reapply.
yes, they all get notified that we're going to purge the list, and do you want to reapply? Other wait lists, like Yarmouth Commons, Simpkin School, housing authorities. You get on that list, you stay on that list. That agency will periodically write you a letter saying, do you still want to stay on the list? We're about to open up the list. And you have to respond or else you get purged, right? And then they pancake that list. They take out anybody who didn't want to stay on, and then they open it up, and anybody who applies gets put on the end. So those are the lists that people are on for like 10 years. Mm-hmm. Whereas our local units, like Wilson and 775 Main Street, those lists get purged every 2 years because the state says that otherwise it's the same people on these wait lists and new people can't get access. So that's how they balance it.
Yeah, I ran into that problem many times.
Right.
You're spending way too much time trying to track one person down who waits till the last second to tell you, oh, no, I'm not interested. And you're like, oh, okay, thank you for,
Oh, I feel your pain. That's what I'm doing right now. So.
Okay. New business, 775 Main Street, West Dennis, tour set for 9:20 at 10 a.m.
Yep. So, Pam, that's the one you were talking about.
I will be there.
Is that a Wednesday or a Friday?
That's a Friday.
Oh, I'll be there.
That's my workout time, but I'll make a
You have to get up early and do your workout.
No, you can't work out early. Come on.
Oh, you're retiring. So, Pam, can you be there on the 20th?
Exactly.
Yes, I can. That's awesome. So this is a building. How about you, Drew? Is that a date?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And Lee, were you going to be able to?
Might be able to on a
Are
Friday.
you just going to meet at
Just
that
meet
address?
there. This is Rob Warren. He was a police officer for years here in Yarmouth. Steve Baboa, and their rock star, I guess that's the new name for administrative assistants, is rock star Randy Millot. And so hopefully they'll all be there. They'll give us a tour of the affordable units. The other units, the market rate units, are already filled. This is the lottery that we're conducting through the Ready Renter program, where we've got 100 units. One of the units will be accessible. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to see that. And the lottery is going to be held on October 10th over in Dennis. This was a vacant commercial building that they redid into, I think, 24 units, and 6 are affordable. And what's interesting is they did.
This big mansion?
No, it's not the Columns. It's by Cuppy's and Ezra Baker School.
Okay.
Oh, it used to be a real estate officer or an investment office or something like that?
Definitely 2 stories. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a big building. Mm-hmm. And the units are modest size. They're not huge. They're on the smaller side, but they were able to fit in 24. So we'll be able to look at, the building, their work. What's interesting,
24 units, how many are affordable?
6. 5 1-bedrooms, 1 2-bedroom. So you can see, because it's local units, they were able to pick the bedroom mix.
So these would be for people who live in Dennis or people who live in Dennis and surrounding area?
So six of the units, so 2 of the 6 units are open pool, right? I think 1 has a bedroom preference, 1 has an accessibility preference, and 2 have local preference. So if there's no one that has an accessibility need applies, right, then that unit goes to the open pool. Do you know what I mean? It's filled by the open pool. Same thing, let's say there's a veteran family or several that apply, but none of them end up taking the unit or qualifying at the final qualification, then you go back to the open pool. So, same thing with the local preference. There's a preference for people who live, work, or have a child in the Dennis school system. But if none of those work out, then they go back to the open pool. And it's only the initial lease-up.
So these folks could
Yes, for the local preference, which is on 2 of the units. So the state has just loosened up. It's always capped at no more than 70% of the affordable units can have these preferences. But they're allowing this veteran preference. They're encouraging this accessibility preference. So this is going to be interesting for our lottery agent, because now he has all these applications, right? So he has to work very closely with the state on these different lottery drawings. And on the 10th, if anybody wants to come and help pull numbers out of the hat, if you're available, I'll send you out.
Remind me.
Yeah, we don't exactly, we think it's at 1 o'clock, but we're still confirming the meeting room. Or is it going to be the morning? But anyways, it's either going to be morning or afternoon. We haven't set the time, but we do need volunteers because we might, have to pull these numbers several times.
Are the people in the room?
Oh, yeah.
So you pull their number and they're jumping for joy?
Oh, crying.
Oh, crying. Okay.
Really?
I don't want to make anybody cry, but...
The ones that can cry with excitement, and the ones that don't get selected cry.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's the 10th. All right, good. That will be fun.
Okay. Reports and actions, chair's report. I don't have anything. Home consortium.
Yeah, the last meeting was August 15th. Not a lot to report. Mary was also there, making sure I was on my best behavior. There was an update by the Barrett Planning Group on the Shared Regional Housing Services Pilot Program. Mary has been appointed the Yarmouth point person. There was a roundtable general discussion on the recently passed Affordable Home Act. As you mentioned, it's 162 pages. I don't think too many people had a chance to go through it too intently. So that was a short discussion. I have a feeling that will be discussed in the future in more depth. The September meeting is canceled due to a conflict because the chair of that meeting, I guess, will also be at the
1K?
The one, yeah, exactly. So the next meeting will be October 17th, and my guess is that the roundtable on the Affordable Homes Act will be a little bit more robust. So, did I miss anything?
Nope. The home consortium staff person is like a paralegal. She used to always work in law offices.
Elaine?
Rini. So I'm looking forward to her read on the Affordable Home Act because she has a legal background.
She runs a tight meeting, Rini.
Okay, Yarmouth Housing Authority.
Just to remind you, we're carrying on with the proposal for Forest Road, and our proposed RFP should be submitted to the state, probably, as long as we approve it. I think we'll approve it very shortly, and they're going to give us our guidance on whether they think it's a good one from their point of view. On we go, little by little. That's my main update on that.
Okay, thank you, Drew. Affordable Housing Trust.
Okay. So the trust meets October 15th. I just wanted to update you that they're partnering with UMass, I think it's Amherst, their policy center. I think it's Amherst. Policy Center, the Donahue Institute. Boston, sorry. And to kind of do almost what P-Town did with the short-term rental study, but have it done for Yarmouth. So basically,
where the town pays a subsidy to the landlord for leasing year round.
What they want to do is identify what are the benefits and the costs of short-term rentals and seasonal housing on Yarmouth's economy, housing market, etc. So, because we were going towards regulating short-term rentals, But remember when we put that in the housing production plan, there were some people at the planning board that said, whoa, wait. They actually generate some revenue, tax revenue, that we're using to do the wastewater. We're using as a funding source for our wastewater infrastructure installation and construction. So that's where we started talking about, well, maybe we should have a study of this. So they're going to be doing some fairly intricate data analysis from statistics from our Department of Health, DOR, because there's a tax on all of this. And it's not Airbnb, but it's DNA, right? And instead of Airbnb, it's Air DNA.
What is the DNA?
DNA, like, it's the scientific term for code. So what they do is they scrape data. They go and they mine data on all these sites and buy all this data, deduplicate it, and see what trends happen in Yarmouth. Basically, they're trying to see, is there a real economic incentive to rent your house out as a short-term rental or a seasonal housing versus renting it year-round? And how do you mitigate the negative impacts of that and amplify the positive ones? So that's what's going.
Is the town paying
The trust. The trust would pay for that. So just to keep you up to speed on that. Let's see, the next thing.
Is there an end date on that?
No, we don't have a start date yet. But once we get the Donahue Institute working on it, they said it would take them 6 months.
No, that's impressive.
That is impressive.
Yeah.
So they're really,
Yeah, I know. I'm familiar with who they are and what they do.
and they're going to be doing the short-term rental piece for the state's housing plan. Remember the state came down for a listening session and they admitted that they don't even have a plan? They don't even have a 5-year plan for housing, but they want all of us to have 5-year plans. So they're working on that, and the Donahue Institute is probably going to do the chapter on short-term rentals. So this is great because we're right in there with everybody. The next thing is the trust put out an RFP for $500,000 for an agency to run a home repair program. And so the trust had set aside that $500,000 maybe about 6 months ago, and so I issued the RFP, and we do have one response, which is Howard Ecumenical Council for Housing, who has gone to the Community Preservation Committee first, like directly, and runs a very similar program right now. So, and then we have money for rental buy-down RFP. I have to reissue that because we issued that and nobody responded. And that would be to buy property to convert to affordable rentals.
Drew, should you be muting?
Hi, Drew. We can hear you.
Okay.
Sorry. And
You have a question there?
No, I was just wondering if you did Drew. If you realize that.
And then the last one is they're working on several sites for home preservation, including in your neighborhood, Lee. So we're making progress with everything. So,
Both of those? The dilapidated is probably going to have to be torn down or something.
no, just one of the two, yeah. There's like 5 I'm working on. They're very time-consuming.
What neighborhood is that?
Plymouth Road.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. One of the units that we're looking at in German Hills, they created 2 bedrooms without the benefit of a building permit. So please, everybody, if you want to add a bedroom to your house, get a building permit. Because when you go to sell it, it causes a huge problem.
Well, when the owners of my place reduced it from 3 to 2, they did go through the town, so it was in the town record.
Yeah.
So when they went to say, well, I'm not being taxed for 3 bedrooms, it should be 2.
Yeah.
I had records of that, and so did the town.
The building permit is so important. So that's what the trust is up to.
Okay, planning board.
Planning board, in your packet is the draft warrant article for the new calculation for an inclusionary affordable unit that would be provided not in the project site, but rather with a cash payment to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Now, when this gets submitted to the select board, I'm assuming, right? Do they have any idea what the cash amount is probably going to be?
Oh, that's a good idea to have.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. And this will be for October.
Okay.
What is the cash payment now, Mary?
It's like 150, 155
Which is
per,
like 300, we thought, right?
yeah. And that's what it costs, though.
Per
That's
unit?
what it costs.
Yeah.
800 per unit?
The affordability gap is about 300,000.
Someone's building like up at 6A Davenport, they're putting 6 places in there. So instead of one being affordable, they pay the town $150.
Right now, it's about
But
100.
it would be 300.
This would be more like,
That's a development of 6A,
Yeah.
it's not far from me.
Yeah, I'm just using that as an example.
That's gonna be 6 units, 6 homes?
Oh, I don't know, it was going to be,
it was 14, and they owed us 2 affordable units, two affordable units, but they provided a cash payment of about 155 per. And so we looked at that and we said, oh, that's not going to really be able to buy us 2 units. So we're trying to reset that. It used to, 100.
This requires two-thirds vote from both the select board and planning board.
I think it requires simple majority,
Oh, okay,
but town meeting will be 2/3.
okay.
Because it's a change to the zoning bylaw. And so this is a town meeting where, you know, members of the Affordable Housing Trust and the Community Housing Committee will need to be prepared to talk about why we went to change this. I don't attend town meeting. Karen Green does as the Director of Community Development. Kathy Williams will as town planner. But there'll always be opportunity for residents, you know, registered voters to get to the mic and talk about it. So we can get prepared for that as October comes.
Okay, Community Preservation Committee, year-round rent incentives.
Community Preservation Committee,
Well, I meant to put that under community development, sorry.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, so Lee,
well, we just talked about the RFPs.
so the deadline is
Yeah,
September 20th,
right.
and then,
And then the committee assesses them and Dawn goes through them and we all get copies of those and then review them, talk about them in the committee and then invite the applicant in to ask questions, answer questions.
I'm sorry, this zoning article is for May, I'm sorry, not October.
Okay.
I was going to say, yeah, because October's next month.
It's not, sorry, all right.
Okay, sorry.
But, yeah, and that's in preparation for May town meeting. And then under Department of Community Development,
So we're gonna rewrite this in some fashion that
what it will have is we'll have an info sheet
yep, okay.
attached to it.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. Or, so sometimes people don't ask, you know what I mean? So, they'll probably have that answer ready. right?
Okay.
But I'll make sure that they have that answer ready. Because if it gets printed now into the warrant, it could be outdated by the time it gets to town meeting. Do you know what I mean? The way it is, it's when the income limits get issued, which is always a moving target on the calendar. It's never the same date. That's when you set the price. So, but for Department of Community Development, the Board of Selectmen, I'm expecting to have something coming out of that office, the town administrator's office, regarding goals. They had a summit a couple of weekends ago where the select board got together and they talked about their 10 top goals for the next fiscal year. And what came out of that was a directive to the town administrator to come up with ideas about how to encourage year-round rentals. Not necessarily affordable housing, not necessarily affordable rental, but how to get some of our housing stock to be used year-round as rental property. Staff is working with the town administrator to get some ideas. So one of them was lease to locals, right? And Mackenzie. Yep, and Mackenzie Perry is a Yarmouth resident, and she agreed to be part of this kind of like think tank group that the town administrator is putting together. And the other one was the tax exemption, you know, for people who rent their unit year-round, a tax exemption from the town property tax. So that's the update on that.
Okay.
Did that tax exemption make up for profits that they would make if they rented it short-term? I remember seeing something in the commission thing that they can make in 2 months what a landlord makes in a year, right?
No, I think we talked about this relative to Provincetown, I think, and it's, I don't think it generally makes up for what you could make short-term, but it allows for some benefit back to the homeowner.
Right, it takes away the risk of the first year. Do you know what I mean? It pays, the lease to local covers that difference in the first year.
First 2 years.
That was just the first year, and then there's no subsidy for the second year.
Okay.
But people like to have somebody in their unit year-round. Do you know what I mean? So it just takes away that risk, and Lease to Local says that the majority of units that they help establish a year-round tenant stays that way.
So the first year probably comes close to paying the difference. But, you know, what I think the goal in the end is somebody gets a good tenant in there, and it's like, I'd rather have a good tenant that's paying their rent every month.
I've said that for 30 years.
Yeah,
A good tenant who pays their rent on time and takes care of the property is invaluable.
Rather than like a weekly risk,
Exactly.
right? And then what we were thinking of doing was, you know, that first year have a subsidy, and then out years have the tax exemption. So it would never cover the difference, but it would be at least something from the town.
More of an incentive.
Yeah.
Okay. Upcoming meetings, committee meeting, we have to make a decision either the 4th or the 18th, right?
Yep.
Either one is fine with me. I don't have a preference.
Yeah, either's fine with me as well, and either time too.
So you're not meeting in October.
But we're meeting October too, right, Mary?
I skipped a month.
Which is good by me, I won't be here in October too.
I skipped a month.
October 2, you can book a trip to the veteran's house.
So let me see.
Because, all right, bear with me while I do this. Okay.
The meetings are the second Monday?
Yeah, so we have a holiday issue.
Right, so October will be the 14th, correct? 10/14.
But isn't that Indigenous Peoples' Day?
Yep.
Oh, I got November figured out early. Okay. So, I have us meeting at 3 o'clock on Monday, October 7th.
Not the 14th, the 7th.
Right, because the 14th, isn't that a holiday?
That is a holiday, yeah.
I will be in the Azores.
10/7.
Lucky you.
And the 17th, I mean, we can't wait till the 21st because that's early voting.
Yeah, no, that 7th, it works for me.
And then we have to be out of here by 3, can we start at 2 o'clock?
On October 7th?
Yeah.
That's fine with me. Anybody have a problem with that?
I'm okay.
Okay. Because the Board of Health starts at 5:30 and they like to get in here at 5. So let's start at 2 p.m.
Okay.
And then let's just put it on our calendar, November 4th at 2. In November. So,
That's it?
And November 4th is too because of
Veterans Day.
Veterans Day. Okay.
Yeah, 2 p.m. Then we won't have any conflict whatsoever with the Board of Health.
2 p.m. to
Okay, so I'll send out an email with those dates.
Okay, I think that's it. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.